My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, titles make up our society today. If you look at different people in different fields, everyone has a certain title. Whether it's CEO, director, associate professor, everyone has a title. And this title defines you as an individual in your career or in your line of work. And if you look at the prophets and at the Sahaba, they also had titles. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he was termed the Siddiq because he was very truthful. Khalid ibn Walid was termed as Sayfullah because he was fierce in battle. And he represented the sword of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And out of the prophets, one of them had a very unique title, which was the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that was Sayyidina Ibrahim. And for you to get this title, there are certain characteristics that you need to display. And in any type of friendship, there needs to be a certain amount of sacrifice. And you have to prove your friendship to that individual for them to trust you. And so Sayyidina Ibrahim, ﷺ, he proved himself time and time again. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to leave his wife and son, firstborn son, in the middle of nowhere, he listened and obeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the hardest test to take his son Ismail and to give the ultimate sacrifice, he was able to do it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without hesitation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spared the life of Ismail, and instead sent down a sheep or a lamb for him to slaughter. So Sayyidina Ibrahim, he proved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he was indeed worthy of that title, the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Sayyidina Ibrahim, he was faced with another task. Now this is Ismail right now, he's starting to grow, he just got married. And so Sayyidina Ibrahim, he was asked to go and build the Kaaba for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the time, the worshipping of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had diminished significantly. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted a symbol to show the world that He is being worshipped and Him alone. This idea of polytheism, it does not exist. And so he asked Sayyidina Ibrahim to build the Kaaba for him. And so Sayyidina Ibrahim, he's going to go, and then who does he decide to take with him? His son, Sayyidina Ismail. And so he goes to his house and he knocks on the door and he asks, is my son there? Ismail? He says, Ismail there? And his wife, Sayyidina Ismail's wife, she was there and she said, no, he's not here. Can I take a message? Well, he's like, Sayyidina Ibrahim, he goes like, well, what's the status of the house? What's going on in your household? And she's like, oh, it's horrible. We're starving. We have nothing to eat. We feel so poor, destitute, all these things. And so Sayyidina Ibrahim was like, okay. So she asked him, would you like me to leave a message for you? For him? And he goes like, Sayyidina Ibrahim goes like, yes. Just tell him, give him my salams. And also tell him to change the gate of the house. Change the gate of the house. So Sayyidina Ibrahim leaves, and who comes back? Sayyidina Ismail. He says, do you have any messages for me today? And his wife replies, oh yes, this old man, he came to you. And Sayyidina Ismail goes, what did he say? He said salams. And he said, did he give any advice? He said, yeah, change the gate of the house. And so Sayyidina Ismail, he says, oh, that old man, that was my father. He came to check up on me and he gave salams. And when he said to change the gate of the house, he meant for me to divorce you. So pack up your things and go. And so Sayyidina Ibrahim comes back again. He wants to see his son. He wants to take on this venture of Kaaba. And so he meets Sayyidina Ismail. He got married again. And Sayyidina Ibrahim knocks on the door and he says, is this Sayyidina Ismail at home? And his new wife says no. And so he says, okay, how is your guys' condition? Sayyidina Ismail, his wife, his new wife, she says, alhamdulillah, everything's fine. We have food, we have shelter over our house, we're in good condition. And so Sayyidina Ibrahim, he says, okay, can you leave this message for me? And she's like, sure. What's the message? He says, give him my salams and tell him to strengthen the gate of the house. And so when Sayyidina Ismail returns home, he asks again for any messages, and his wife, she said, this nice old man came. And he said, for you to strengthen the house, he says salams, and he said to strengthen the gate of the house. Meaning that he approved of this marriage. Now this was the first time he was meeting either wife, and he was giving the blessings for the first one, it didn't make the cut, and the second one, she did. And so finally, Sayyidina Ismail and Sayyidina Ibrahim, they meet and they embrace each other. And so what happens is, Sayyidina Ibrahim, he says, I need your help. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked me for something. And so the last favor, or the last revelation that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was what? For Sayyidina Ibrahim to slaughter Sayyidina Ismail. So now Sayyidina Ismail is like, oh, you have another revelation? What is it? And he goes like, Allah entrusted me to build his house, the Kaaba, and I need your help. And so they went together. So they started building brick by brick, stone by stone. The architect was Sayyidina Jibreel, sent down to show them how to build the Kaaba. And Sayyidina Ibrahim was building, him and Sayyidina Ismail. And as they were doing this, رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accept from us this deed. You are indeed the all hearer and all knower. And they keep building, and they just finished the Kaaba up to the measurements of what Sayyidina Jibreel showed them. Now the Kaaba, it's different now than when they built it. The specs are all different. It used to be wider, now it's narrower, it's taller, it's changed completely. But when they built the Kaaba, Sayyidina Ibrahim, he said, you know, obviously it's a square, cube. He's like, where are people going to know where to start from? So we need to find a white rock. So he sent Sayyidina Ismail to look for a white rock, or to look for any rock. So he said, we need to get a rock that's different than any other rocks that we built, so people know that's where you start, from this corner, and then to work your way around for the tawaf of the Kaaba. So Sayyidina Ismail, he goes, he's dead tired. They've been working on this thing. I mean, if you look at the Kaaba, it's huge, right? 2 men working on it together for days on end. He's dead tired, he's looking around, he couldn't find it. He comes back, he sees his father, and he has this big white boulder in his hand, this big white stone. And so Sayyidina Ismail, where did you get this rock from? He said, I got it from someone who doesn't get tired and who doesn't need any help like us. I got it from Jibreel, alayhi salam. And this rock was sent down from Jannah, pure white. So they placed the rock and they put it in the corner of the house. Now, they finished the deed. What's the next commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Ibrahim to call people for a pilgrimage. Now obviously he's in the middle of nowhere, who's going to hear him? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you call people and let me take care of the rest. And so that was how the Kaaba was built from that day. Now after Sayyidina Ibrahim, he built the Kaaba, he made very unique ad'iyah. Now, when they were building the Kaaba, they were saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, taqabbal minna, right? Accept from us this deed. Then, Sayyidina Ibrahim, he says, رَبَّنَا وَجْعَلْنَا مُسْلِمَيْنِ لَكَ. Make us Muslims to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِنَا أُمَّةً مُسْلِمَةً. And from our offspring, a nation that is Muslimah. Right? And then he goes on to make dua. And the last one, he makes another dua. What is it? He says, رَبَّنَا وَابْعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from this offspring, send them a prophet. Not just any prophet. That he's going to teach them your verses. And not just that, from a book, from the hikmah, the way of life, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, to remind them, to implore them, what? So they can worship you. إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. You are the Aziz, the all-powerful, the Hakim, the all-wise. Now if you look at these ad'iyah that Sayyidina Ibrahim started saying, he made dua for himself and for his son, so his family. Then he made dua for his community. And then he makes dua for his offsprings. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, if you realize that Sayyidina Ibrahim, he wasn't just planning ahead for his family or his kids or grandkids, he was planning ahead for generations and generations to come. Sayyidina Ibrahim was planning for his legacy. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He blessed them. And if you look at the lineage of Sayyidina Ibrahim, all the prophets and messengers come from Sayyidina Ismail and Sayyidina Ishaq, his son to come later on. He blesses his family. And then who else? The final messenger, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, comes from Sayyidina Ibrahim. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Sayyidina Ibrahim was an example of someone who plans for generations to come. He left a legacy that to this day, people still remember, and the faiths all across the world remember as the Abrahamic faiths: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فإنه هو غفور رحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, we mentioned the legacy of Sayyidina Ibrahim. There is a hadith that Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ says, and it says, whoever takes care of an orphan on the day of judgment, him and I are like this. He raises forefinger and middle finger together to show the closeness of him, are like this in Jannah. That close. I wanted to bring this hadith to highlight the fact to each and every one of us that anyone here can attain that level in Jannah. Anyone here can work hard to get to that level. He didn't say that you're a prophet. He just gave an example of a kind act that you would do if you take care of someone who's an orphan. And the possibilities are endless of things that you can do. So I wanted to bring this up as each one here has a legacy. When we think about a legacy, everyone's like, oh, they go and fantasize about, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, look at his legacy. But everyone here has a legacy. Whether a father raising his family, a mother taking care of her kids, your offspring, that's your legacy. Some people, their legacy is the work, the career that they leave behind, that's their legacy. Some people, their legacy is their community. Some people, they have a legacy that stretches beyond time, like Sayyidina Ibrahim. But everyone has a legacy. And everyone can work for it. So I wanted to remind each and every one of us that, yes, that we are aware that we have our own legacy and that we need to work for it, and it is possible to attain greatness, that if you work hard for it. But how do you achieve something like this? And I kind of highlight it in 3 kind of simple steps. And obviously nothing simple in life, but just kind of guidelines. And the first thing is to identify what your legacy is, to make that niyyah. Sayyidina Ibrahim, he made that niyyah with the ad'iyah that he made when he built the Kaaba. Make the niyyah. The second thing is do milestones in your life, regardless of what it is. Have milestones, checklists. And the third thing is you're going to need sacrifice and patience. Sacrifice and patience. Set the niyyah, make the goal, milestones, and sacrifice and patience. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, the legacy that you leave behind, it defines you as a person, it defines your characteristic, and on the day of judgment you will be asked, what have you done? And I hope on the day of judgment, each and every one of us can present something that we'll be proud of.